Hi, it's Heather. I am back with another process video. Thank you for joining me. I am starting out with a piece of cardstock that I actually cut a hot air balloon out already, and I used that on another layout, but I kept the negative because I had this idea of popping it up and putting something in the middle, even though at the time I hadn't really decided what. But so I traced the hot air balloon and I drew these lines because what I wanted to do was take these small alpha stamps. These are Paige Evans' new stamp set, and stamp, I guess, all the words and names that I use to describe my daughter. I call her all sorts of names like Cutie Pie and Sweet Pea, and she's not really crazy about it, but I just, well, any mother who knows, I just love her so much. So I use these names all the time. So I filled the entire hot air balloon with all of these words and different colored inks. And the inks that I used were from various manufacturers. I used a lot of the Tim Holtz Distress inks. I used some inks from Lawn Fawn and Simon Says Stamp, Altenew, a couple of archival, and I don't make you watch this entire process because it did take a very long time. And actually going through this, it would have been really nice to have two of these stamp sets. So I didn't, because obviously some of the words have more than one like A in it. So I had to go back and stamp those separate. So basically what I did is I laid out as much as I could on each line, and I used this long stamp block. I think it's 1x8. It's from Lawn Fawn, and I love it for stamping words because I don't know, I just feel like having a long block makes it really helpful. Sorry about my head there. So I used it to straighten them out. And then I ink them and then stamp them. And then if I had to go back to stamp another one of the letters, I did that with a little small square block. So sorry about my head again, but I had to get up close to see that it was straight. So there it is, all done. And that stamp, that is my daughter's name, Cheyenne. And my mother actually had that made for her a while back, and I use it more than she does. So I am backing my photo with some vellum, and then that little striped bag is actually, I received some flair from Cuts to Love in it, and so I keep all of those because why not? I can use them to layer. But what you saw me doing earlier with the Cheyenne woodblock stamp was I stamped it on some vellum because I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to stamp it, and it took me a really long time to actually stamp on it because it was with black ink and it was with a woodblock stamp, and they always make me really nervous, and I was so worried that I would stamp it and mess it up, and then all of the work I had already done would be ruined. So just take your time. If you're, I mean, anyone who's stamped with woodblock stamps knows take your time and you get used to it because the stamp doesn't always line up with the wood block. And anyway, but I managed to get it straight. And because the letters are lowercase, it doesn't really match up with the stamp set, but I fill it in, and you'll see how I do that a little bit later. So right now, this is the piece of cardstock that I had cut the hot air balloon out of, obviously, and then I'm going to pop that up on a bunch of foam. And I know that my photo is going to go to the right-hand side, so I just wanted to add something underneath of it. And as I started to add more and more color, I kind of feel like I went a little overboard, but anybody who likes to paint in watercolor, it's hard to stop. You just want to keep adding more and more and more. And there already is so much color from the stamping, but I just felt like it needed to have something behind it. And obviously my photo is not that big, so some of it's covered up, but some of it will peek out from behind. And I was trying to get a rainbow of colors because I didn't want to have really any more one color than the other. And that's where it got me into trouble, because I just kept adding and adding and adding. And I'm using my Prima Confections watercolor, the pastels, which I love. That was my favorite set out of all of them. I don't actually have any of the other sets. That was the only one I wanted. So right now you're seeing me back the bottom of the hot air balloon. And I used what left, so the scraps that I had left of a paper from Hip Kit Club that was designed by Arit, and it had like this watercolor pattern on it, and I loved it, and so I used it to cover the bottom of the basket. So there's all the foam all over, and I probably should have stitched before I put the the foam on, because I didn't have anywhere to tape it down. But once I had popped it up and put it down, I just felt like there needed to be an outline. And I thought about, you see my little daughter's finger on the right-hand side? She caught me with that picture, and she's like, "What are you doing with it? Why do you have that picture?" And I was like, "What do you mean? It's you. I take pictures of you and scrub all of them." So that was her like pointing at it going, "What are you doing with this picture?" So anyway, I decided to stitch around the hot air balloon with black, because I really felt like it needed an outline, and I could have just drawn around it, but I am trying to get a little bit more experience with the stitching, and you could probably tell from this view it's not that straight. But it's okay. I'm okay with it. So the bottom part of the hot air balloon, I had originally planned to do, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do on the bottom or the top part of the basket. So I filled the bottom with just the flat, pattern paper. And I really wanted to do some sort of stitching. And so you can see there that I took the branding strips from that same paper. I gotta tell you, I used every scrap of this paper up. And I glued them on another sheet of cardstock, just a scratch piece of cardstock. And then I stitched squares on it. Like, I kind of wanted, like a hot air balloon basket. It's got, I don't know if they're usually weaved or what the case might be, but I wanted some sort of texture there. And I hadn't quite decided how I was going to handle the seam yet, but I have one of those little tassels. Is that from Maggie Holmes? I'm not sure. Yeah, I have a hard time with that. See, I do something, then I take it off. And anyway, so right now I'm just putting down some embellishments. I layered my photo with a frame, an old frame from We Are Memory Keepers, and that other one I think is crepe paper, the blue one. And I have a couple pieces of flair from Cuts to Love. It says the pretty one. And then the heart one is from A Flair to Buttons. And usually when I'm putting down like embellishments like hearts or stars, I usually put them down like sparingly, but it's a hot air balloon, and I scattered a lot of them around my photo. And I love these puffy ones from Pink Fresh Studio. They're matte, and who doesn't love puffy stickers? But I like that they have all these different sizes, and even really, really teeny ones. So I used a lot of them to scatter around my photo, and then to the upper left side of the hot air balloon as well. And the colors really matched all the inks. I mean, I didn't really plan that. It just worked out that way. And I hadn't, at this point, really decided what my title would be. I mean, I guess I could have taken the easy way out and just made it Cheyenne. But I felt like I needed something else. So this part, I cut out a lot of it as well, because I was being so indecisive. I wanted to fill in some of the spaces around the words. And so I took some of those hearts and filled them in. And in hindsight, I wish I would have maybe added some buttons or something else. But I was happy to use a lot of these stickers. But I kept moving them around and around and around, because I was just trying to distribute the color. I put way too much thought into it. I really did not need to spend this much time moving them all around, but I totally overthought it, which you ever placing embellishments like this and feel like it needs to be perfect, and it really doesn't. It's just a layout, and all that matters in the end is that you like it. So here is the part where I'm trying to figure out how I want to handle the seam. So I put down some double-sided tape, and I thought about just ruffling some white ribbon. And once I did that, I actually really liked it. But once I did that, I realized, how am I going to add the tassel, which I really wanted to add? And I had planned to put maybe some twine, almost like it was wrapped around the hot air balloon, but I put the ribbon down, and then I didn't really leave myself any room to do that. So I struggled quite a bit trying to put the twine like underneath the left and the right hand side, so it was hanging, and got really frustrated with it. This layout actually took me the course of like 4 or 5 days because of the stamping, and because this part took me so long, and I was so frustrated. You can see me there. I'm trying to add it in underneath, and then of course the twine is fraying. It did not look. I finally got it in there, and I added some little beads, little tiny beads, just so it wasn't the twine and the for the life of me, I can't figure out what the name of that is now, even though I've said it like 5 times. So tassel. So now it's the next day, because that whole part with the tassel and the twine really irritated me. And I am trying to figure out where exactly my photo is going to be and where my title is going to be. And when all else fails, just glue something else down if you can't figure it out. Just move on to something else. And I have that piece of like acetate word. It says favorite. And I toyed around with placing it over top of my photo. And I've had it for so long, and I really want to use it, but it doesn't make it. So I have these alphas from Paige Evans, which I absolutely love. And you know, when I bought them, I actually only thought that you'd get the white. I had no idea that the blue ones were in there too. And I was really, really pleasantly surprised. And has anybody else noticed that those are exact same size as the stamp set? Like, that's what you saw me do, was I put the S over top of the S, because they are the exact same size. So I decided on my title being Let Me Count the Ways. And I actually think that I put way instead of ways. I don't remember at this point, but it kept me up last night. It's a layout ever. Have you ever stayed up late just thinking about a layout? And I don't know why it popped into my head. But I started out with these little alphas from Pink Fresh Studio, the light peach ones, because I was going to try and mix the alphas, but I figured that there was a lot going on already. And the dark blue ones from Paige Evans, they just were too dark. They didn't match this layout. And I was worried that the white ones would just blend in too much. But I think overall it's not the same shade of white, and it stands out enough. So I am really happy with the way that looks. So I mixed it in with some of her small square alphas, and I am just adding some journaling down below, explaining how I love to use all these words to describe my daughter, my beautiful, sweet little girl. And other than that, I added some splatters, and there I go. I ripped off the ribbon because I just kept looking at it, and I was not happy with it. I just couldn't stand the way that it looks. So what I did is I used that last little bit of branding strip. That is the last scrap I had from that paper. It was a well-loved paper. And I just wrapped some twine around it, and added in the tassel, put some pop foam on it, made it a banner like on the ends, a fishtail, and that was it. So this is my finished layout. I really hope that you liked it and you found some inspiration in what I've done. Go get those stamps because they're awesome, and I had a really great time making this, and it's time consuming, but I love the way that it turned out. So I hope you try and do a bunch of stamping like this on your layout. So thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate you watching. Have a great day, and I will be back soon with another layout. Have a great weekend.